What if a young boy from a quiet Filipino town could bring the spirit of a legend back to life on one of the world's biggest stages? What if one song could carry the weight of years of struggle, silent tears, and an unshaken dream? On a bright night under the glowing lights of America's Got Talent, the crowd expected another good performance. They did not expect history to echo through a single voice. Miguel Santos stood backstage, only 17, his hands slightly trembling. He was small in frame, humble in nature, but his eyes carried something larger than fear. They carried memory. Miguel grew up in Cebu, Philippines, raised by his mother Elena. Elena was a laundry worker with tired hands and a hopeful heart. She believed in quiet prayers and loud dreams. Miguel's grandfather, Roberto, once sang in small community gatherings. Roberto was gentle, nostalgic, and deeply in love with old vinyl records, especially those of Elvis Presley. As a child, Miguel would sit beside his grandfather's dusty record player. He would watch the needle drop, and the room would fill with a voice that felt like thunder wrapped in velvet. Roberto used to close his eyes and hum along, as if he were standing beside Elvis himself. Those evenings planted something inside Miguel. Not fame. Not applause. But a feeling. A connection to music that felt alive. Now, years later, standing miles away from home, Miguel felt that same needle drop inside his heart. The stage manager signaled his turn. The curtains waited. The audience murmured. Back home in Cebu, Elena sat in front of a small television, her fingers tightly clasped. Roberto's old vinyl record rested beside her, like a silent blessing. Could a Filipino boy carry the soul of a legend? Could he honor the past while creating his own future? And when the lights finally hit his face, would the world hear just another singer? Or would they feel something unforgettable? Miguel Santos was not the loudest boy in the room. He was the one who listened more than he spoke. Growing up in a narrow street in Cebu, his world was small but full of sound. The sound of tricycles passing. The sound of rain hitting tin roofs. The sound of his mother humming while folding laundry late at night. Miguel shared a tiny home with his mother, Elena. After his father passed away when he was 10, the house felt quieter. Yet somehow, music made it feel full again. Elena worked long hours washing clothes for other families. Her back often ached, but she never complained. Miguel noticed everything. The tired eyes. The forced smiles. The quiet strength. That is why he sang. Not for fame. Not for attention. But because singing felt like giving something back to the woman who gave him everything. Miguel had simple habits. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise. He would sit outside with his grandfather's old headphones, listening to Elvis Presley songs on his cracked phone. He studied every note carefully. The pauses. The breathing. The way Elvis made silence feel powerful. Sometimes neighbors would tease him gently, calling him Little Elvis. He would smile shyly and look down at his worn-out sneakers. He never answered back. Deep inside, he often doubted himself. Was his voice strong enough? Was he just copying a legend? Would people laugh at him for trying? Before stepping onto the stage of America's Got Talent, those questions grew louder than ever. Backstage, he kept touching the small silver cross around his neck. It was his grandfather's. A reminder that courage does not need to be loud. Miguel felt fear. But beneath that fear was something deeper. A calm belief. He was not there to compete. He was there to honor a dream that began in a tiny Filipino home, beside an old record player, where music first taught him how to hope. Dreams are beautiful when they are small. But when they grow bigger than your world, they begin to feel frightening. For Miguel, everything changed the year his grandfather Roberto passed away. Roberto was not just family. He was the bridge between Miguel and music. The old record player went silent after his death. The house felt heavier. Miguel stopped singing for weeks. Each time he tried, his voice cracked, not from lack of skill, but from grief. The songs reminded him too much of the man who first believed in him. Without Roberto's gentle nod of approval, music suddenly felt empty. Neighbors still called him Little Elvis, but now it felt like pressure. A comparison he was afraid he could never live up to. At school, classmates chased practical dreams, engineering, nursing, office jobs overseas. Stable paths. Safe futures. Miguel carried a different dream, one that had no guarantee. He saw his mother come home each night exhausted, her fingers wrinkled from soap and water. The guilt began to grow inside him. Was chasing music selfish? Should he forget the stage and find work instead? The turning point came when Elena quietly sold her only piece of jewelry, her wedding ring, to help Miguel apply for an audition abroad. She never told him at first. He found out by accident when he noticed her bare hand. The sight of it shook him deeply. Her sacrifice felt heavier than any spotlight. If he failed, it would not just be his disappointment. It would mean her sacrifice meant nothing. Loneliness followed him to the airport. For the first time, he left the Philippines alone. On the plane, surrounded by strangers, Miguel stared at the clouds and felt very small. He wasn't just fighting nerves. He was fighting doubt. Grief. Responsibility. Standing backstage at America's Got Talent, he realized the real battle was not about hitting the perfect note. It was about believing he deserved to stand there at all. The stage lights felt warmer than Miguel expected. For a brief second, the brightness blinded him. The crowd was only a dark blur beyond the glow. His heart pounded loudly in his ears. Then the music began. The opening notes of an old classic once sung by Elvis Presley floated into the air. A risky choice. A bold one. Some in the audience shifted in their seats. A few exchanged doubtful glances. Covering Elvis was dangerous. The legend was too big. Miguel closed his eyes. He did not see the judges. He did not see the cameras. He saw his grandfather's small living room. The dusty record player. The soft smile of Roberto humming along. The first line left his lips. It was steady. Deep. Controlled. The crowd leaned forward. Then something unexpected happened. Miguel stopped trying to sound like Elvis. Instead of copying the famous tone, he allowed his own voice to rise, warmer, younger, carrying the softness of island winds and childhood memories. He was no longer imitating a legend. He was telling his own story through the melody. The shift was subtle but powerful. The nervous boy disappeared. In his place stood someone grounded, present, alive. Halfway through the performance, the audience began clapping in rhythm. Not politely. Not out of encouragement. But because they felt something real. Back home in Cebu, Elena covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. The final note came, long and controlled, filling every corner of the auditorium of America's Got Talent. Silence followed. A heavy, breathtaking silence. And then, the entire crowd rose to their feet. Miguel opened his eyes slowly. For the first time that night, he understood something life-changing. He was never meant to replace Elvis. He was meant to carry the spirit of music forward, in his own voice.